Awesome. Everybody's ready? Can hear you. Cool. So thanks for everybody joining. Thanks, Christian and Hannibal, for joining the panel. Today we're going to talk about just the general challenges that game developers are having in the space. I think we're going to try to open up our minds around Web3 and other growth verticals that we're seeing in the space. Obviously, a lot of us are very bullish on Web3 and want to make it work. But I think it's also important to understand what other options exist in the market. So kind of showing both sides of very optimistic and also healthy skepticism about the market and about Web3. So without further ado, maybe we'll start with quick introductions. Share about yourself. Why should people listen to you today?
My name is Hannibal Suarez. I'm the founder and CEO of Boomland, which is a Web3 game publisher. And prior to that, I co-founded and ran a very successful mobile gaming studio called Boombit, which published over 200 games and generated around 2 billion downloads.
And I'm Christian Segerstrahl. I'm the CEO of Super Evil Megacorp. We are a cross-platform multiplayer game developer. Today, we do not actually develop anything in Web3, so I'll say that directly. But I have been a company builder for the past 23 years or so in computer games, always making it my business to figure out what the future of games is at any one time. It's kind of what gets me up in the morning, work out how will people play in 5 years and how can I today build something that is relevant for where technology, popular culture, and design sort of intersect in that time frame. So I'm always incredibly curious about the future overall.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, guys. All right, so let's just jump in. Maybe you guys want to start at kind of your perspective about the existing challenges that Web3 or Web2 game developers are facing based on the recent announcement that we're all aware of and kind of what you see in the market. Maybe leave the impact yet, but just talk about just the challenges being a Web2 developer. What are you seeing that actually encourage you to look for new opportunities in the market, right?
Look, I mean, from a Web3 perspective, and especially compared to 2 years ago when we started, I think things are looking quite upbeat. Like, for example, in terms of costs, if you started 2 years ago, any developer was asking like 3 times more money just for having blockchain on their CV. It was insane. That has come down massively. Now it's very much normalized with like normal Unity developers. And in terms of distribution, of course, I specialize in mobile gaming, so everyone is waiting on Apple and Google. But again, things are looking up. Google is now, as of last month, allowed to monetize with ads in Web3 games. They allow to do traditional user acquisition as well for Web3 games. So there's no one actively doing that yet, but it's definitely going to come. So I think really we've never been in a better position now, like after this like crypto winter, to see like reputable studios coming in, and we know that's happening right now. Great games are coming out.
Yeah, I think from a more, if you want to call it Web2 traditional game point of view, I think there's maybe 3 broad areas which I think everyone would broadly agree with. The first one being discovery. The ways in which the airwaves, if you like, are crowded all the way from TikTok, all the way to App Store traffic being down, all the way to just game advertising in general struggling. I think we're struggling with organics and we're struggling with paid advertising as an industry right now. It doesn't mean that like UA is dead or anything like this, but it's just much harder. It's more expensive. It's more difficult to get your game discovered out there. And it's sort of almost a lack of perhaps innovation even in that area. And
what has changed though that caused this to happen?
I think there's maybe, all of these things are interrelated. IDFA gets a lot of press. I think IDFA has something to do with it, but I don't think IDFA is it really at all. I think a lot of it, honestly, is just App Store traffic. There has been relatively little innovation. Like, there was a time when you got a new phone and you're like, yes, I want to see what I can get on this thing, right? Not so much. There's not that much hardware innovation. Hasn't been that much game innovation. App Store traffic is down. Mobile games in particular aren't necessarily a topic that you discuss, hey, what's the latest game that you've been playing, frankly, because the top 10s have been static. So it's a mix of, on the one hand, some aspects of the business and IDFA and deprecation and so on, but also to a large part, in my opinion, simply a symptom of a maturation of what today is the mobile gaming market. By the way, also true for PC. It's not like PC discovery is all great either. Yeah, no. There's just simply so much content, so much great live ops and so on. But like, I think discovery is probably the single biggest one. I think a lot of game developers struggle with, if you like, oversupply at the moment. There was overinvestment in the market during the pandemic, and as a result, you've seen a lot of layoffs in different places where you now look at what is the likely forecast for this game that we've just developed, and you look at it not looking so good. What are we going to do? That's certainly happening a whole bunch. And then there is just a broader level of it. Used to be that with games you competed with the other games that are coming out. Not anymore. You have this layered stack of games that are incredible at live ops, that are better and better and better at investing and bringing people back, which means that the next game that comes out, it's not like the movies where, there's the set amount of movies that launch in Q4. No, you're also competing with the entire stack of great live ops games at any one time, which drives up consumer expectation, drives up the sense of what does a game need to be when it comes out. And that always creates a significant challenge. Like, you can't launch Fortnite the way that Fortnite was when it launched. You have to launch Fortnite with all the things, like a competitor to it, if you like, with all the things that it kind of has. So that's driven up consumer expectation, which drives up budget. So broadly, discovery, engagement, budget.
Yeah, so you touched a little bit about the impact of what you're seeing, but how is it affecting you as someone who's building in that space still? How are you addressing it, or what are you trying to do to combat that?
Yeah, I think, I'll start, I'll hand over in a second, but from my point of view, games has always been in trouble in one way or the other. It's pretty cool that we've grown from, like, when I started, I think we were something like a $30 billion industry, and we're now nearly 200 billion, and it always feels like the sky is falling for one reason or another. There's always some crisis somewhere. So from that point of view, like, my first thing would be that everyone's just dealing with it. You just have to identify what the challenges are and deal with it. The cool thing about our industry is it evolves all the time. And there are, I think, like the presentation we saw earlier about, hey, business model is like one important vector of change in the market. This is true. And I lived through both the start of mobile games and, I suppose, through mobile games, but also through the free-to-play change. And it is a big deal. I would, though, posit that that's not the only big change vector that's going on. One of the really interesting trends that we are super focused on as a company, for example, is cross-platform and transmedia, for that matter, which to me are related things.
Do you want to maybe give a background about, so if people are not familiar with the terms here, what does the two concepts means? Yeah,
so natively cross-platform just meaning that making games that are on day one or certainly very soon after launch available on anything and everything that plays games. So simply making sure on a parity level. So it's not like, for example, if you were unlucky enough to play Fortnite, which is an amazing game, but on mobile, not so amazing, just doesn't feel very good. Most mobile ports of AAA games are exactly that today. They are ports and they don't feel as good. You are not a first-class citizen. You can't cross-play most of the time. Whereas clearly there are benefits to your game being available on every platform, for example, which is kind of boring, but it's just true and it's difficult to execute. So if you can make things where you're a first-class citizen and have parity across all platforms, that's fairly straightforward.
I mean, do you see the same players playing across platforms? It's just access to just more players that playing different platforms?
It's just access to more players, more shared moments, predominantly. And then transmedia, meaning just like games started really live ops when free-to-play started in a bigger way, so call it 15 years ago or so. In a similar way, linear media has gone from kind of movies to really being quite TV series focused in terms of this IP engagement over time. And what does that mean when linear media becomes natively digital, and us as an interactive media can perhaps help in some ways provide IP fandom that kind of transcends linear and interactive media, mainly, frankly, as a way to punch through in terms of discovery and ongoing engagement. Like, what can you do we're fundamentally an entertainment business. Like, we talk a lot about supply problems, like what are the problems for developers, but thinking about it, what are the problems for a consumer? Like, if you love an IP and the TV series just finished and you're like, is that it? That's all the story I have, and I have to wait 2 years before I can, or whatever, engage with this IP again. What if we as an entertainment industry could do something about that? And that's pretty interesting.
So does it create a continuation from a game to a series to some other physical experience?
Yeah, live ops today is so content-based. What if live ops was instead narrative-based? What if that could provide a richer universe to engage with? Anyway, I mean, the point being, I think Web3 is an interesting potential evolution direction for the industry. I think there are many others. If you think about how will people play 10 years from now, what are the things that we will then see as obviously things were going to happen this way. Like when Super Evil Megacorp was started, it was common knowledge that mobile gaming is a casual gaming platform. Why would ever anyone play a thing that they would play on console and mobile? And today you look at top 10s, you have a whole bunch of core games being played on mobile. It's in a similar way, if you look back 10 years from now, what will have looked like, it's now obvious, that wasn't obvious back then. In fact, early days of mobile games, I mean, those of us who were around back then, there was a really big, really legit debate of will mobile gaming ever take off? Because the UI is so bad and the keys, you know, you could press these number keys, you can never. No, everything is bad. Like this can't possibly be a game platform. So just because something looks difficult today doesn't mean it can't be done. And I think that's true for Web3. I think it's true also for all these other vectors.
And I think that's kind of Hannibal's point, right? Like they're trying to innovate and pioneer things that are really hard today that most people might think, oh, it doesn't make any sense, but trying to prove it that it actually could work, right? So maybe you can talk about the vector growth in Web3 and what you guys are seeing as an opportunity for the challenges that you're facing as from the traditional point of view.
Definitely. Well, that's actually a conversation we have all the time as a publisher with traditional gaming studios. You know, of course, the first question is why should we do this? And I mean, apart from the obvious ones, which is that's another a new revenue stream through either digital assets, primaries, secondaries, tokens, etc. But you know, retention, as we know, is like the main KPI in gaming, and we are seeing firsthand that retention and engagement is substantially higher in Web3 games, especially in the mid to the long-term retention, like day 30, day 60, day 90. And I think it was mentioned a bit earlier, which we completely agree with, just the fact that the players own the digital assets, it really creates, and I'm not talking about play to earn and play and earn, none of that, just owning the digital assets in the game really adds a much higher engagement and a personal, like an emotional connection to the game and to the studio. It increases community massively, even from players that normally wouldn't engage in community activities. But I think if I had to name one thing that really I believe it's going to make a massive difference, and Christian mentioned discoverability, is user acquisition. So user acquisition in the last 5 years in Web2 gaming has completely changed the game. Like I've published a lot of Web2 games that today, they quite literally don't stand a chance, because not only the tsunami of hyper-casual games completely created a race to zero. And basically, it's not about the best game or the best team. It's the game with the lowest cost per install, CPI, which is really frustrating. And you have as well like the almost endless budget of the top grossing games. So between those two, it's very hard to stand out. And what Web3 gives is an access to a completely untappable audience, which is what, like in user acquisition terms, is called like tier 3 geos. I'm talking like Southeast Asia, South America, Africa, where no one in Web2 is ever trying to get downloads there. The credit card adoption is very low. They don't buy in-app purchases. They can't monetize with ads. So it's kind of, you call them rest of world when you're talking about your geos. Now in Web3 it's completely different. These countries are literally tier 1 because, you know, thanks in great part with Axie Infinity that educated this audience in how to engage and play with the games, they really know how to play and how to monetize. And in our early tests, you can acquire users in those regions for like almost as low as 1 cent, where in terms of monetization, they would be considered several dollars in Web2. And you know, there's still a long way to go, but I think if you're struggling and you have a great product and you can't compete with marketing, I think being early in Web3 and in user acquisition and grow a big audience by the time the industry matures, it's one of the most exciting things. And as Christian was saying, you know, like I started in Web2 in 2011. Everyone thought I was crazy, you know, like no one will ever play a game on the phone, and free games will never make money. And I feel like exact the same experience with Web3. Everyone's saying like it's never going to work and there's only scams. But I really see this as being the future of gaming. I don't see it any other way, really.
How do you see that combine, you know, the Web3 experience and the player ownership with transmedia, with cross-platform? Like, do you see those converge somehow together?
No, I mean, I guess eventually everything in this world converges one way or the other. I guess that I would make 2 points. Like, for example, for us, it's very important to build step by step. We have today 3 games in development. We released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Splinter Fate earlier this year, hoping to bring it to PC and console in the near future. We're working on a big project with Netflix around the Rebel Moon IP, which is really big. We're hoping to really push the transmedia perspective there. And then we're working on an unannounced AAA.
What can you announce? What kind of can you share
no,
today?
No, but what I guess, so when we're working on our skills all the time, constantly pushing updates to players, constantly getting better at what we do. The one perspective I would offer is that it is true that with free-to-play or with mobile gaming, there were a whole bunch of people who said this was never going to work, and it turned out to work. There's also a whole bunch of innovations that people said were never going to work and never worked out, to be clear. So just because some people say it's not going to work doesn't mean that it's going to work. And the thing in particular I'd call attention to when it comes to mobile games is there was actually a time around actually the IPO of my first company, Glue Mobile, 2007, which is actually the reason why I left. I left a mobile game company in order to create an online game company then called Playfish at the time, because I was so deathly worried about where mobile gaming was heading. This was pre-touchscreen, pre-iPhone. It seemed like everything was just about distribution and people were pushing product through the pipe, through the network operators, and the product quality was going down. People started talking about mobile games as this is just crap, guys. It's a bit like if you remember the ringtone market. It was a thing for a while and then it became synonymous with scams, right? There is a responsibility that any industry, in particular an entertainment industry, has for quality and for collective brand. This, by the way, happened also in console. If you study the 1980s and computer games, if you saw that wave that we saw earlier, there was a whole bunch of drops around the 1980s when games became synonymous as being bad quality. This is just a bad thing. People asking me for $20 or whatever they cost at the time, and it's just bad. It's not a good experience.
Sounds like what people say about Web3 gaming.
Yeah, so and this is what's really important, is that it isn't enough to have the lowest install cost. It's not enough to have the quickest monetization scheme or whatever it is. If Web3 gaming, and again, this is not something that we are working on, but as a student of the industry and as a person that wants the industry to succeed, if Web3 truly becomes synonymous with scams and bad quality, like it's super difficult to dig yourself out of that hole. So that's why I actually think that ultimately holding ourselves as a game industry, whatever we're working on, responsible for like delighting, surprising, and genuinely offering great entertainment to players, whatever the supply considerations happen to be, is really vital. And we sometimes take our eye off that. And I think it's really important.
I mean, unfortunately, the last 2 years is kind of what we call the dark ages of GameFi, where the games were not games. And I think that set up back the industry quite a lot, definitely like a few years. But the good news is that despite all that, they are like very good studios, reputable, that, you know, like straight away from the pedigree, you know, that they had credibility. They are coming out now because, yeah, the games until now, they were not a good representation of Web3 gaming could be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of continue on your thought, and as a healthy skepticism, what is the ultimate use case that would tell you, okay, it's time to come back, it's time to adopt this technology? Like, what do you need to see to say, like, yes, now I should bring all my resources back to it and come along?
From my point of view, it literally is just a great game, just a great game. And
One game.
Again, it's totally fair. Like,
We're working on it.
That's what I was going to. And I have incredible respect for first movers in markets. You know, as Hannibal was saying, like somebody needs to be there when nobody believes in order to create the example, and then others can follow. Right? From our point of view, you know, we have north of 100 people we're working on. We have a skill set, I suppose, and we're very focused on the path that we're going down, and we are very big believers in focus, and we've chosen our innovation vectors, and we're sticking to those at this moment in time. I do think that the Web3 game industry owes itself to make one example of a truly entertaining game that reaches scale beyond early adopters, beyond the GameFi speculator crew. And I think the ingredients are there. They just haven't been put together. Actually, when we had the pre-call, I used the example personally of, I really vividly remember 2007, 2008, it was a known thing that touchscreens on mobile were just a bad user interface. People, you know, there were touchscreen phones around from different manufacturers. It was just bad, you know. Typing was really hard. People would say, like, this is bad UX, you know. It's not good. And there were some famous mobile phone makers that were market leaders at that time that said, we are not adopting this because, you know, this is bad UX. And then one day Apple comes along with the iPhone and actually fixes it.
Change the game.
They really fixed it and really changed all the perception and everything about what it was. And I do feel in some ways like that's sort of what Web3 gaming needs. They need somebody to come in and actually fix it. Put the puzzle pieces together in such a way that it's a great experience. And that's, I think, what not just me, but the industry and frankly consumers, I think, are waiting for. I mean, so no pressure, dude. But
no, but look, the way I see it, and of course, I'm super bullish about the future of Web3 gaming. But when we speak to kids and younger audience today about free-to-play mobile gaming, which we all know it's taking over, right? And you ask these kids, you're talking about the history of gaming, and they literally can't believe that 10 years ago, every game was paid. Because they refuse to pay for an app, they refuse to pay for anything. All the content is for free, and they will work through milestones to do something. I see a future that 10 years from now, you speak to this younger audience, and they won't believe that you spent weeks and months playing a game and you owned absolutely nothing in it. They will think what's the point? And again, it's not about the play and earn or anything like that, but they want to own their car, their character, their assets. And they will look back, it's really? You own nothing? That sounds like a scam.
So you say this, right? And I can sort of feel and think about it. But if you think of it, we've gone from owning a whole bunch of things, including our movies and our music and everything. And these days, what do you own? You own your subscription to Netflix and your subscription to Spotify, whatever it is, and you own nothing, right? So it's an interesting counter trend that you think that it's going to be that emotional need to own versus consume or rent becomes so dominant. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that it isn't perhaps as obvious given the broader arrow of
I think it's the utility of the ownership that maybe not as clear yet, right? Now that I own it, okay, now
what do you do with it?
Exactly. How can I benefit from actually owning something that I couldn't do before because I didn't own any of the pieces? And I don't know, maybe some of the NFT projects are creating IP marketplaces that, you own your assets, you actually get paid for the assets that you own because Netflix wants to use a bunch of penguins for their next show, right? And they're out crowdsourcing their own IP that they have. And now as an owner, yes, I can actually benefit from having that ownership where otherwise I would just go to a single centralized company that get paid for it.
Yeah, in the end, I really agree with that. Though. In the end, it comes to entertainment.
Yeah.
Is it fun? Can I do a thing, right?
Yeah, and I mean, the difference between gaming and movies, as you were mentioning, is with movie you watch once, you might own it, but you're not going to watch it 30 times, right? But with gaming and the way that I see that the first games are going to start doing it is you play something, you upgrade, it has more value, unlocks live ops, is then an entry ticket to a season, and then a year later you can say, everyone who had this character from a year ago now can go and play on this game, and you bring in across, then opens the conversation to interoperability, cross-promotion, partnerships. So I really think that is once a good game comes in and proves that ownership of assets actually has a value and a utility, I think then no one is ever going to look back.
Question it,
It's going to take a while.
Cool. We have 2 minutes. Anybody wants to ask any questions? Anyone disagree with everything we said today? Or agree? Cool. Yes, no? I guess maybe just to close off, we talked about challenges and traditional. I mean, there's a ton of challenges building in Web3. Do you want to give a quick overview from your perspective? What is the daily struggle? What are you fighting with that other people, I mean, there's a lot of founders here that are trying to, make it and build great games, to be able to share some of your daily struggles?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. It is hard. It's being a completely new industry. There's no one to model yourself, no one to copy, no one to inspire. You can't learn from other people's mistakes. You're innovating all the time, so that's a huge challenge. It's hard to raise money, especially because of the last 2 years of certain bad actors not acting properly and pump and dump schemes, etc. So you really need to prove 10 times more to raise any money. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it's the benefits of being an early adopter vastly compensate for the risks.
Yeah, that goes back to what I said earlier. I feel like we need to prove something so the funds are coming back in the market. Otherwise, we might have to look in transmedia, maybe.
Yeah, no. I'll just end on a more positive note. The game industry is always in trouble one way or the other, right? I mean, we're growing fast, we're profitable, we're very happy with our chosen kind of, if you like, innovation vectors. We picked them a couple of years ago. We've been very, very focused on executing on it. It's worked out well for us so far. You know, yes, this year has been tough for a lot of folks. Gaming has never had a big, like, you know, obviously never say never, these sorts of things, but gaming will continue to grow. It's just a question of using the ingredients you have, figuring out what has been great from the past with some elements of the future, combining them, staying lean, staying focused, and just ultimately make awesome stuff. Yeah. Good things will come.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you.